When a natural disaster hits, we all see the images of the immediate devastating impact. But what happens after the cameras leave? Well, after the Category 5 hurricane winds die down and the waters recede, a second kind of invisible storm often starts to gather, an economic one. And that second storm is exactly what we're diving into today. How Jamaica's central bank, in the midst of the devastation right after a hurricane, is taking carefully calibrated action to limit what could be catastrophic longer-term economic fallout. I mean, think about it. A hurricane doesn't just destroy homes and roads, it can absolutely shatter an economy with negative consequences that could linger for years. It creates this crisis that forces policymakers to take some incredibly tough and, frankly, sometimes really extraordinary decisions. All right, so first up, let's talk about that initial shockwave. We need to look at what happened on the ground right after Hurricane Melissa hit. And this is where you can really see that direct link between the physical destruction and the economic crisis. So you've got this massive infrastructure damage, which just grinds so much productive activity to a halt. Farming, manufacturing, tourism, you name it. And at the same time, you have families in real hardship. So all of this lands right on the doorstep of Bank of Jamaica, an inflation targeting central bank. And suddenly, the central bank is facing what you could call an inflation double punch, a problem with no easy answers. To really get just how big of a shock this was, you have to look at where things stood right before the storm. I mean, check this out. At October 2025, Jamaica's inflation was at a really comfortable 2.9%. It was actually below the central bank's target of 4 to 6%. In terms of the rate of price increases, things were looking pretty good. Low, stable, predictable, with an outlook that carried this rosy price stability picture into the future for another 2 years. And then Melissa hit. The entire forecast changed like overnight. The central bank's new projection is that inflation will rise sharply and blow right past that 6% ceiling. So why the sudden change? Well, the hurricane just wiped out food-producing areas, which means food prices about to shoot up. And the costs of transport, energy, basic home repairs, all set to surge at the same time. Well, here's what they did. Their answer was this really nuanced two-pronged attack. First, hold the line. They kept their main signal interest rate right where it was at 5.75% per year, because they knew raising it would just choke off borrowing right when businesses and families needed it the most to rebuild. And second, open the foreign currency vaults. They decided to dig into their stockpile of foreign reserves and use it to stabilize the market. They immediately pushed $210 million into the market. This wasn't some tiny adjustment. We're talking about a massive, huge intervention. It was designed to send a crystal clear signal. We will provide the currency you need to rebuild, and we will not let our exchange rate spiral out of control. And, this wasn't just about blindly throwing cash at the problem. They had a really smart playbook. They targeted the critical energy sector to provide those big, bulky buyers of foreign exchange directly with US dollars. They actually announced their currency sales ahead of time to give businesses some much needed predictability. And they made it very clear they were ready to do even more if needed. It was a strategy of calm but also an overwhelming show of force at the same time. And Governor Richard Biles really hit the nail on the head here. He said that even with a strategy this unconventional, it all comes back to one core mission: creating a stable and predictable environment. Right in the middle of all this chaos, the goal is to give people and businesses the assurance of a firm foundation to stand on so they can start to recover. So with all these pieces moving on the board, what does the path forward actually look like? Well, Bank of Jamaica has charted a course, the shortest path on the road back to stability. The bank expects that initial shock to hit right away. Then, by the middle of 2026, they are projecting that inflation will hit its peak, breaking right past the target. But, and this is the big if their strategy works, they believe that by early 2027, they can wrestle it back down into that stable, predictable range. It's a plan that's going to require a ton of precision and a whole lot of patience. So you might be asking, how can Jamaica even try this plan? I mean, where does that confidence come from? It's because they went into this crisis from a position of strength. Their banking system is solid, and this is the crucial part. They have strong international currency reserves. So at the end of the day, what you have is Jamaica walking this incredible economic tightrope. They are trying to balance the immediate, desperate need for people to recover against the very real long-term threat of runaway inflation. Look, it's this simple. Inflation is like a wicked tax that hits the poor and other vulnerable groups the most. Bank of Jamaica knows that Jamaica's poor can't take any more after a Category 5 hurricane, and businesses need room to catch their breaths and build back stronger.